My sensitivity is something that I used to be so ashamed of, to the point that I pretended it didn't exist. I pretended that I was just super tough, not bothered by anything. Um, and the ironic thing is that after I accepted my sensitivity, I am now largely actually unbothered by most things. Um, but when I was pretending, I had this big, tough guy, tough girl act that I would put on, um, because I hadn't accepted that part of myself. If I'll just go briefly talk about what I'm talking about is highly sensitive person, the traits of being an HSP. Um, it's it's something that's been observed in like over a dozen different species. These particular traits. Um, there's nothing wrong with you if you're like this. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not special. It's not either of those things. I'm not talking about this as a way of thinking that we're like special snowflakes because we have these traits of highly sensitive person. Um, it just is what it is. We're tribal creatures, pack animals, whatever you want to call it, and we all have a different role to serve within the tribe. And some of us are, you could say, the lookouts. We're very sensitive to changes in the environment, to changes in other people's emotions, things like this. This is what high sensitivity is. I will link, I'm not going to go into all the traits because we'll be here for like a billion hours, but I'll link a video to Elaine Aron's work, one of her talks. She's the first one who sort of came up with this idea and who observed it and decided to start documenting it. And she just explains it much better than I ever could. So I'll link that and go have a look at it if you're interested. But something, and this is another aspect of shadow work, when you deny, suppress, are ashamed of natural traits that you have, natural parts of your personality, of your DNA even, you will project those things onto other people and criticize those things in other people. So all through my 20s, because I felt ashamed of being very sensitive, I don't mean hypersensitive. It's not the same as being easily offended. It's just feeling things very deeply, noticing changes in the environment easily, being sensitive and moved by music, perhaps. Depends how it manifests within you, but everyone's different. But it's something I felt very ashamed of. And we definitely do not live in a world that appreciates these traits, let's just say. Not in the West anyway, and I think in a lot of cultures it's the same. I think there are some cultures that do appreciate these traits, but not where I live. And yeah, when that part of myself was in my shadow, being suppressed, being denied, I was ashamed of it. When I would meet other people who had those traits of being very sensitive, being very in touch with their emotions, being very in touch with the emotions of others, I would see them as weak. I saw them as weak. I saw them as too sensitive, all the rest. And I would tell them to toughen up. I'd tell them to get a cup of concrete and harden the fuck up. And I look back on that, I'm like, ugh. It's sad. It is. It's really sad. And yet at the same time, when you recognize these things in yourself, you're able to see it in other people. And so when someone else is criticizing you for just feeling things the way that you feel them, you're able to see through it in a way, because once you recognize that in yourself, you're able to see when someone is just really bothered by you, like by your existence. Every little thing you do is wrong. Every little thing you do is not good enough, or you're too sensitive, or whatever it is. You stop internalizing what they're saying. You stop internalizing their criticisms, and you start recognizing what it is. It's just projection. And it's their own, I wouldn't say inability, because everyone has the ability to integrate their shadow, but it's their own, at this point in their journey, their own lack of acceptance of themselves. And so whether you're on the receiving end of someone projecting onto you and criticizing you, or maybe you're the one doing the projecting and the criticizing. Maybe there's someone in your life, or a couple of people, you're just constantly bothered by them. They're too sensitive. Oh, they have so many feelings. Oh, yeah, harden up, toughen up. No, the world's a tough place. Meh, meh, meh. That usually is a sign that there's some part of yourself that you haven't accepted, some part of yourself that you feel ashamed of, that you don't like, that you don't love, that is just begging to be integrated. Because being very sensitive is one of those things that's a blessing and a curse. There's nothing wrong with you, and you're not special either. You were born to serve a certain purpose within the tribe. And when you accept that, again, it's not about seeing ourselves as special or superior in some way. It's just having the humility to say, yeah, this is my role. I was born with these traits, and I'm going to perform my role to the best of my ability. I accept this part of myself. I love this part of myself. And also, I recognize the ways that it makes me vulnerable. And I would say in my 20s, I used stoicism as a kind of a shield in a way to keep people out, and just not allow myself to really feel anything. Stoicism wasn't the problem. I was the problem, as usual. Now I can use stoicism in conjunction with those traits. And stoicism has become like the walls of the castle. And it's not about keeping people out. It's about letting the right people through the gates. It's about having some kind of criteria before people are allowed to come into the gates. And even then, when you first meet them, they get a tourist visa for 3 months, okay? And if they're really well behaved, walking around the gardens and kind of the outer areas of the castle, okay, maybe they can apply for residency. Maybe they can have a more permanent role in your life and be allowed into other areas of the castle, so to speak, which could be, more the deeper, the depths of your vulnerability and things like that. Just letting people in very slowly, rather than having walls that are 10,000 feet high and there's no gate to even walk through. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's that. I feel like I've come to the end of the train of thought, and it's quite an abrupt ending, but let's not drag it out. I really appreciate your comments, by the way, guys, on the last video. It's been so nice to read them. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.